Okay, I'm going to start. I know a couple of people have labs today and aren't going to be able to join us, which is why I'm recording the session, so they'll be able to watch it later. So first of all, it's good to see you all. It's, a strange semester for all of us, and I decided to teach this course. I have three courses this semester, and I'm teaching two of them online for a couple of reasons. First, health-wise, I'm over 65, so I'm in the high-risk category. But courses like this and the other ones I teach have they've been reliant on class discussions, there's seminars, and it just seemed to me like that would be difficult to do in person, given the restrictions we have, everybody wearing masks. A lot of times I would group students together, have them, discuss something during class, and we would bring everyone back. So I hope everyone's enjoying it so far. It's a bit of a challenge, but it's a subject that I really enjoy. And certainly, as I said, this semester, I teach the course every fall, and we look at whatever election is the most important. So you really couldn't pick a more important election than the one we're doing this year. So I'm going to share the screen, go through a couple of things, tell you what I want to do today. And I know I set aside some time for questions at the end, but certainly as I'm going through things, if you have a question on anything, let me know. Either send it through the chat feature, speak up. There's not that many of us here, rather than wait to the end. So give me a second here. Okay. This is what I have planned for today, and just as a way of explanation, in some of my jobs back when I worked in government communications, I did some speech writing, and in my public relations classes, I usually spend 1 week on speeches. And one of the things that I learned that seems to be really helpful is if a speaker at the beginning kind of gives a roadmap to where he or she is going. And even as when I'm in the audience for something, it helps me if I know what the speaker is going to talk about. And I've kind of adapted that into my classes. And sometimes it helps me get organized too. Like I'll make a bunch of notes, especially with a class like this throughout the week. I might read a newspaper story or see something on TV, and I'll make a note. I want to talk about that in class. And then when I sit down and organize it into, the different batches I want to talk about. So today I want to talk about your interviews with the campaign experts, which are starting up. I was glad to see a number of people have been in touch with the folks you're supposed to interview already. I'm going to talk about that process a bit. And I want to talk about two other assignments that are coming up, because we're going to be doing a couple of things simultaneously. The way the course is structured, and I tried to explain this at the outset, the first couple of weeks, in our case, the first 3 weeks, we really spent with me trying to build somewhat of a foundation in everybody about politics, about government, and about media. I mean, it's a campaign course, but media is intertwined, and I'm a journalism professor, so pretty much I look at politics through that lens. So we're going to do that. I want to spend just a minute or two, or maybe a few more, talking about the summer program at Oxford, which I've been fortunate enough to be involved with for a couple of years, because I'm fortunate enough to be married to my wife, who is the assistant director of Oxford. And there's going to be a meeting coming up just for honor students, but just want to talk about that a bit. And there's a couple of special options for honor students, which I will just tell you what they are. I don't know all the intricacies of them all, but certainly, when the meeting is, when they hold the meeting, and there'll be a meeting on Zoom, you'll have a chance to ask questions about that. And then I did ask everyone to kind of come to class with a few questions. And this is something I do usually once a semester with my classes, oftentimes at the end, but sometimes at the beginning, sometimes in the middle. It's just a good way to chat about things. And I thought, given the nature of this class, since we really haven't met, the only person I've met before, I think, was Hannah Mergis, because she was at Oxford, but everybody else is new to me. And one of the reasons, a number of reasons I like teaching honors courses, but one is that in the Jandoli School, we tend to get the same students 2 or 3 times, which is great. You get to really know them. But when I teach the honors courses, I get to meet students from all different disciplines throughout the school, and I've been enjoying that. So that's what we're going to do. Just one note before we do that. The election coverage workshop, I know some of you had conflicts, some of you had some technical issues logging on. The panels are now online, the recordings of them. So if for whatever reason you weren't able to watch one or log into one last week, you can do that now, and I'd like everyone to do that. So pick one, you can pick more than one. Post a comment in one of the forums. A number of people have posted there already. There's some good comments, and maybe sometime this week I'll take a closer look at them all and try to summarize all of them. So the links are on Moodle, but you're not going to be able to access them until you log into your Pointer account, and you had to create a Pointer account to access them. If you have issues with that, let me know. I can share my login information with you since the conference is over, but that's there. Okay. Any questions before we start? Okay. Let's talk about the interviews, since that's what's coming up. So the first thing that you should be doing, and like I said, quite a few people have done this already, contact the two people you're assigned to interview. I put you in pairs, so everybody has two different people you're gonna do a Zoom interview or discussion with. Coordinate with your partner. That's just, I think, out of courtesy for the speaker, so they don't get two different emails. It might be good if whoever your partner is, talk with he or she, find out what times are good for both of you, and then send those to the person that you're going to do the interview with. Copy me on all your emails so I know, what's going on, how the process is moving along. Once you agree on a date and time, then work with me and work with you on questions. There's actually one starting on Tuesday, which is great. I just haven't had a chance to put anything on Moodle about asking questions. There's a really good PDF, which I'll put up there. It actually was created for focus groups, but it tells you how to ask questions in a manner that you're going to get more than a yes or no answer. But I would say most of these people I know pretty well, and they're pretty talkative. They're not going to give you 1 or 2 word answers, but just kind of helps you, with the questions there. As far as dates and times go, some people ask for specific times, and I notice in the emails that have gone out, people have written back saying when's good for them. The more we can spread them out, the better. There's 13 people that we're interviewing. So, I'd rather not have, 4 interviews in 1 week. So, if somebody said, I can't talk until after election day, that's fine. So just get them nailed down. Okay. Okay. With the interviews, everyone in class needs to watch each one. These are pretty much, consider them like the readings or the videos or things I put on Moodle. They're part of our class content. Normally, if we were meeting in class, we would meet the 12 of us. The person would either come to the classroom. If they're remote, we would Zoom them in or use Skype or something. I decided to do it differently this year because I had a class somewhat like this last spring when we switched to online, and I had speakers lined up, and we had some great discussions, but it kind of seemed to me that the discussions were two-dimensional. It was a speaker, student would ask a question, speaker would answer, another student would ask a question. And I thought if we did it in a more informal setting where there's 2 people with the speaker, I'm going to moderate and make sure the discussion moves along, we could get, a nice conversation discussion going. But I'd like everybody to watch each one of these videos. So once they're up, actually, I'll put the links, the Zoom links up before the videos. So if you want to watch them live, you're welcome to do that. And if you want to, ask some questions, you're welcome to do that after the students who are assigned to that speaker are finished. So as I say, consider them part of the course materials. I might work something that somebody said into a quiz question. It might show up as a forum, depending on how the conversation goes. So that's where we are with the interviews. Okay. I wanted to go through the different speakers and see where everybody is. So Damian Bednar's, who seemed to be the most popular person, and I don't know if it was because he was first on the list or because he worked on the 2008 Obama campaign. Damian was an intern who worked for me back in New Jersey when I was at a think tank called the Hall Institute. Really bright guy. He got his master's, and about, I think, less than a week after he got his master's, he went to New Hampshire to work for the Obama campaign at a time when Obama was kind of a long shot. at that time, people thought Hillary Clinton had the nomination wrapped up for 2008. So Allison and Mary, have either of you reached out to Damien yet?
Actually, yeah, Mary emailed me and we corresponded at a time that works for both of us. So we're gonna email him soon and tell him like what time works for both of us.
Okay, great. Would you just forward those to me? So, and
Okay.
like I said,
yeah,
that way I know what's going on. Okay.
Mhm.
Bridget Bauman, I think, one of you, either Dominic or Wesley, emailed her. I didn't see her write back yet. Have you heard back from her?
No, not specifically. She hasn't emailed us back other than that first one she sent right after you had emailed her.
Okay. I would say with her and with, some of the other people you might not have heard back from, give them till the middle of the week and then just send like a friendly reminder. Some of these, all these people are busy. Sometimes your emails might get lost. It may be, if you don't hear back after reminder, I'll email the person, because even though they have your names, they might not recognize your emails. So, with Bridget's someone who I have not had as a guest before. She seemed real enthusiastic. She's from the Western New York area, and she's working, I think, for Roll Call down in Washington, D.C. A friend of mine suggested her. Sean Darcy and Laura Matos, Mary and Jessica, you should be set for tomorrow, okay? I can't see everybody here. You guys on the call? Jessica is here. So I will email you a link. I sent you some materials over the weekend just to kind of help put some questions together. So that one is at 3 o'clock tomorrow. And as I said, I'll share the link with everybody. Sean and Laura are a couple. They're good friends of mine. We all work together in the New Jersey governor's office. So Sean has his own political consulting business. Laura's working for a lobbying firm, but she's also a leader of some Latino political action committee in New Jersey. So they'll be great to talk with. Tara Del Del, I know someone someone emailed her. I don't know if that was Catherine. I know you go by Kat or Jessica. Did you hear back from Tara?
No, neither of us have yet.
Okay. She's another one who is, kind of slow to respond. And, again, like everyone else, she might be a bit busier than the other folks. So do the same thing that I told the people who haven't heard back from Bridget. Wait till maybe Wednesday. If you haven't heard, just send a friendly reminder. Copy me on the email. And if you don't hear by the end of the week, I'll write to her. Jeff Freeland did write back. I think, Dominic, you wrote to him. And it sounds like, he gave you kind of a window of when he wants to talk. So are we good with Jeff?
Yeah, he said sometime in October after the House of Representatives does something.
Okay. So I think you may want to suggest a few dates to him. Just, the sooner we can get on these people's calendars, the better. I also would say that it's quite possible that some of these may not happen. Everybody agreed to it, but people's schedules get busy or things happen, emergencies happen, especially with campaigns. So hopefully we do all these come through, but we may have to be flexible. We may have to switch a couple around. Lou Jacobson, Hannah or Justin, have you reached out to Lou?
I haven't gotten a chance to email Justin yet, so I was going to either today or tomorrow so that we could coordinate about emailing Lou.
Okay, that sounds good. Lou will probably write back right away. He's been working with me on a PolitiFact project with our journalism students. He also wrote the first article that we read, so he's very familiar with St. Bonaventure. And he's one of these people, he kind of has a work habit like I do, that he works around the clock. I'll email him at 11 o'clock at night and he'll write back. So as soon as you and Justin get together, email him, we'll go there. Amit, Natalie, and Anshu, have either of you reached out to Amit?
No, not yet. I was gonna email him to coordinate a time,
Okay.
and then email him this week.
Yeah, do that. Amit was a student of mine at Rutgers, and he joined the Biden campaign last fall. So he Skyped into my class last fall, and he's really good to talk with. And I also found that he's probably closer in age to most of you. And even though these other people have a lot of accomplishments and they work in different jobs, sometimes I find that students just like, it resonates a bit more if you're talking to someone who's just a few years older than you. Brad Lawrence, Andrew, I think you wrote to Brad and he wants to talk after Election Day.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Brad's a political consultant, like really sharp. So I think it'll be good having him after Election Day. He can, give us this analysis of what happened. Or, based on what we heard last week, it may not be Election Day, it may be election week, but I would try to lock him into a time now. And I would say that to everybody. So that we have people put the class on their calendar, because otherwise it may be a little tough to, their calendars are going to fill up quickly.
Okay.
Bob McCarthy, I believe, is scheduled. I saw a bunch of emails with Anshu and Wesley. I think it's the week after next. He's come like the 22nd. I have it in my email, but Anshu and Wesley, we're set with Bob, right?
Yeah, it's on Thursday, the 24th at 9 a.m.
Okay. Bob is a Bonaventure alumnus, loves the school. He's disappointed he's not going to be able to come down here and visit the campus, because he does that whenever he comes into class. But he's a bit like me in that he never intended to become a political journalist. He wanted to be a sports writer. I wanted to be a music writer. He ended up covering politics, I think, for the Olean Times Herald, went to the Buffalo News, and now he's regarded as one of the top political writers in the country. So it'll be, be great to hear from him. Jonathan Tamari, Natalie or Kat, have either of you reached out to him yet? So.
We both sent emails. We just haven't heard back yet.
Okay, I would say the same thing I told the other people, and just try to remember to copy me on the emails. That way I know they're going out.
Okay,
John
I'll
is
forward
an
them.
person. He covered government in New Jersey. Then he went to the Philadelphia Inquirer. I think he still covered the state. And then he switched to sports. He covered the Philadelphia Eagles for a couple of years. And then he went back to politics, and he's been working in their Washington bureau. So he really has a bird's eye view of the presidential race. He's covering it day in, day out. Bob Van Wicklen, I think Amara is not here. I think she's one of the people who had a lab today. Justin, anything with Bob?
Not yet.
Okay. Bob's on, he works here at Bonaventure. He spoke to my class last fall, and I really didn't know much of his background. I had seen him speak about fundraising campaigns, and he made the parallels between fundraising campaigns and political campaigns. And I thought that was kind of interesting, so I asked him to talk to the class, and he really has a fascinating background. He worked for two members of Congress before he went into different jobs. He was in the service. He was in the same troop or platoon as Pete Buttigieg. So he said he had no idea that he would go into government and actually become a presidential candidate. So again, reach out to him. He's probably someone we can schedule pretty quickly. So if some of these other people are going to take some time before they have a free date, we may be able to get him first. Henry Watazik, I know someone emailed him because I was copied on that. I don't know if it was Andrew or Hannah. So that was you, Hannah? So, yeah. Henry's my brother-in-law, so if you don't get him, I'll just text him, or I see him every couple of weeks. Henry, I think I put in the email, now he runs Batavia Downs. If you live in the area and you ever see there's these Batavia Downs commercials where he's on a casino floor saying, "Hi, I'm Henry," that's him. But he's very well connected in Republican politics in the area. He was the Niagara County Republican chair for a while, so he's in the private sector now, but he still has a really good handle about what's going on. So, okay, so I think we're moving along. Anybody have any questions, any problems with, how you're progressing with things? Okay, like I said, just keep me in the loop, and hopefully we can nail down a couple more of these dates soon. Okay. I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about where we are semester-wise and where we're going. So this is there's a file I put on Moodle when we started. It was a week-by-week schedule. And, we're following it somewhat. And we did the kind of an introduction overview the first week. We looked at the national political conventions. The Democratic one had already taken place, and the Republican one took place that first week of the semester. Did a little bit of an overview of media and politics and media theory. There were a few things which I had planned to bring up, but we can work them in as the semester goes along. Same thing with last week. I wanted to talk specifically about how the pandemic was affecting things, and I think, that's been worked into some of the conversations, but we'll work it in some more. But we had the webinar, which I thought, when it was taking place and the fact that it was free, it was a good thing to work into the course. So, like I said, I know a number of you got to those seminars, to the workshops when they're taking place, and if you haven't done that, do that so we can kind of wrap up that part. The next week or two were devoted to more campaign foundations, and when I looked at this today, I saw that this week is polls, so I will get you some information on polls later this week that we can read and discuss. But as it turned out, a lot of the discussions in the webinar, were about polls, about why they were off by so much in 2016, or the polls are saying where they weren't off by, so much. So we'll talk about them a little bit this week. I'll probably get another reading out to you on Wednesday. Okay. So that's where we are. Where we're going, we'll continue with the foundations next week. I wanted to talk about debates because that's going to lead right into when the presidential debates are coming up. And as I said, we're going to be doing a couple of things simultaneously. We're going to do this debate tracking process, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, but there you can see the dates of the debates. But at the same time, when I teach these courses, I usually spend a course or a week on different topics, perspectives of politics and government. So, as we do the debate tracking, we're going to look at one of those different perspectives each week. Privacy, week of the 28th, role of entertainment in politics, which I think you may have touched on a bit already, negative campaigning, class that I call Chaos, Revolution, and Dissent, where I talk about some of the protests of the 60s, how they affected things, the 2000 presidential election, which was undecided, which now is suddenly a lot more relevant this year than it's been in the past. And, we certainly can add to it some of the current events. Then we'll probably spend the week before election, getting ready, doing some analysis, talking about what we expect. Then once it takes place, and again, I plan this thinking election day is going to be like it always was. We'll know who won on November 3rd, and we can do some analysis. So, as I said, just stay flexible, and we'll see how that goes. Don't have to talk too much about this now, but since we're going through the schedule, post-election day, I usually spend a little bit of time talking about government transitions, how they work, and devote the last week or two to the class, asking you to come up with ideas, because we will have spent the semester talking about, about government, about politics, looking at probably a lot of things that are wrong with it. So it's your chance to kind of, if you could start from scratch, what sort of media system would you create? What sort of campaign system would you create? So that's what we'll be doing those last 2 weeks. So just as I said, so everyone kind of has a roadmap of what I have planned. Again, everything is subject to change. The way all this works into the course grade-wise, and this is just a screenshot of the syllabus, quizzes, we're going to continue those. Blog posts I'm going to talk about in a minute, along with the debate tracking. Panel discussions we talked about already. Final paper we'll talk about around election, probably post-election. Okay. So let me go into blog posts. Again, I'll just stop for a minute, see if anyone has a question. I've been talking a lot, and generally I talk a lot the first couple of weeks of the semester and then kind of turn it over to the class. Okay. Blog posts, and there's some examples on Moodle of what the class did last semester. Everyone's going to be assigned a week to do a blog post. I have 2 people assigned each week, and that means each person does a blog post. It doesn't mean you work together with the person you're assigned with. And I think I have it timed so that they'll wrap up right before the election. So pick a topic that you want to write about. Get that to me on Monday of your assigned week. Once I okay it, which I'll do right away, or if you're not, I might tell you to pick something else, or I might tell you to tweak it a certain bit. Get a draft to me by Wednesday of that week. I'll look at it. I'll send you back some comments, and then the revisions are due by Friday. Whatever you write is going to be posted on the Jandoli Institute website. So just kind of keep that in mind, that it's not something that's just for my eyes here. It's going out. It'll be on the web. And I think, you know, it'll be a good opportunity for you. You'll be out there. I mean, I teach journalism, so students are used to writing stuff that's published and posted. So it's an opportunity for you to hopefully show that you've learned how to analyze and comment on all the things going on in campaigns intelligently and effectively. They don't have to be super long. I'm looking for about 100 words. Again, if you look at what the students did last semester, that's kind of what I have in mind. Schedule is here, and I'll put these slides on Moodle, but I'll put the schedule up as well. I just did it alphabetically by first names. So again, there's 2 people every week, and you know, you're doing your own post. You're not working in partner to do, you know, one combined post. So we'll start the week of September 21st. That's Allison and Amara. So by that Monday, give me an idea, and then we'll follow through with the schedule. Okay. Okay, let me just move to the presidential debates and the media tracking. These are the dates of the presidential debates. We're not going to include the vice presidential debate in the project I plan. We're just going to do the 3 presidential debates. And again, I have some examples of how we've done this for different events before, but we do it as a group. Everybody's going to log a different part, put it in an Excel sheet that we'll share, and then I'll kind of sort it, and we'll see what conclusions we get from it. So those 3 dates we're dealing with: September 29th, October 15th, October 22nd. There's 12 people in here, so I'm going to assign 4 people to each debate. And what I want you to do is grade each answer. And I'll give you more details as we get closer, but not grade it on content. As we talk about debates, and it's probably no surprise to you, candidates tend not to answer the questions. They'll be evasive. They'll get a question, but they'll move it in some other direction. So I want to get a sense of how closely they actually answer the question. So 4 people are going to give a grade to every question. I'll average them out, so it's not just one person giving the grade. And we'll see where we are. After the first one, we'll compile it. We'll see how people did. We'll do the same thing after the second, after the third, and then we'll look at them all together. So that's what we'll be doing for the tracking. I haven't, you know, split up the groups yet, but I'll get that to you. And let me just go back to the schedule for the blog post. If for whatever reason the week I gave you is a tough week where you have some other things doing, if you want to switch with someone else, I'm fine with that. Just let me know that you've switched. Like I said, a lot of times when I'm in the classroom, I'll put all the names in a cup or something, and I'll just kind of pick them at random. We can't do that, so I just did it alphabetically by your first names. So that's the presidential debate. All right, that's pretty much the end of what I had in mind to talk about the class. As I said, I thought it would just be good to get everyone together, talk about these, you know, where we are, where we're going. Before we move on, I'm going to talk about Oxford. I want to take your questions, just any general questions people have. Okay, so let's put the US aside for a minute and talk about Oxford. This is Trinity College at Oxford University. As I said, I've been fortunate to be there teaching. Well, I taught 3 of the last 4. I've been there the last 4 summers. I didn't teach the first summer I was there. This is from 2 years ago, I believe. It's a great program. I'm going to ask Hannah to talk with you a bit about it since she was there. This is one of the high tables every Thursday. There's a fancy dinner. It's a great experience educationally, culturally. You can take up to 3 courses. Most people take 2 because if you take 3, you're not going to be able to really enjoy some of the experience of being in Oxford. You can take 1 course if you like, but there's special honors extension courses, which I wanted to make you aware of. And again, I probably can't answer specific questions about these. That's probably better left for the Zoom meeting. But there's 2 courses, which you can take the regular course and you'll get credit for it. But there's biology course, exploration of infectious disease. It's taught by a professor from Oxford named Adam Ritchie, who actually has been working on a vaccine for the coronavirus. He's been kind of at the forefront of some of Oxford's efforts there. Really intelligent guy, also a really down-to-earth guy. So you get a chance to study with him if you do that. If you want to get credit for the honors program, you just do what's called an honors extension, which would mean you do a few extra things in addition to the regular course. The other honors course is Age of Shakespeare, which is taught by a professor from Bulgaria, who we've gotten to know really well the last couple of years. Kind of the same thing. It's not a course about Shakespeare's writing. It's about what England was like in the Age of Shakespeare. And again, there'd be some things to kind of tack onto that. So I was going to ask Hannah to say a few words, but I pulled a couple of pictures out so I can show you what's happening. And it reminded me of, as I was doing this, how much I missed being in Oxford this summer. But this is, some of us teach classes outside. That's Mike Jones-Kelly, who runs the program in the top. There with Anna Bolshevitz, we both teach in the Gendoli School. So as a professor, it's a really, to me, real rewarding way to teach, because you sit around and you just have an intelligent conversation with a bunch of students for a few hours. So that's out on the lawn at Oxford. This is a shot of Trinity College. It's really beautiful. Sometimes you just forget, you just look to your left, to your right, and there's like a beautiful building everywhere. This is the dinner from High Table. Like I said, every Thursday night, there's a very fancy dinner. Food is great. I don't know what it's going to be like this summer. Like everybody else, they're dealing with COVID restrictions. They're trying to get as close back to normal as possible. This is was a classroom that was set up last year. They do a seminar before the high tables. This one actually was on wine tasting, which was the first one that we did. And then some of the culture, I mean, there's a lot of things all over. This is something which to me was very special, that there's a pub there called the Eagle, and I can't remember the full name, but W.H. Lewis, Tolkien, and some other famous writers would go there and they would work and they would drink beer. And you could actually sit at the table where, somebody like C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, worked and came up with some of the classic works. So it's really kind of to me, an amazing place to be. But Hannah said she would be kind enough to talk a little bit about it from her perspective as a student. So I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes, Hannah.
Thanks. So I wanted to say the Oxford program holds a very special place in my heart. I'm currently living with 2 friends that I made in Oxford. They're my closest friends, 2 of them, and then the friends that I've made since then have become my closest friends as well, as an extension of those friends. I'm so grateful for the experience I had there. Traveling to another country and experiencing what you can really only experience outside the United States when it comes to culture and the history there, because even though we have a lot of history here, it's nothing compared to the amount of history in Oxford alone. I mean, even at Trinity alone. I believe like the staircase that I was staying in had been around for about 500 years or something like that. Just an incredibly interesting place to be. I learned so much from Dr. Antonova. I really enjoyed her class a lot. I took the Age of Shakespeare class. I did expect it to be studies of Shakespearean text, but it was not. I got to watch a production of Twelfth Night at there's an old prison in Oxford, so we got to watch that. It was really, really interesting. It started raining during the experience, but like it was still one of the most fun experiences I had there. I also took women minorities in the media with the other professor Lee, which was really an enjoyable class for me to take. I'm a philosophy major, so I don't really get to learn a lot about the media, and I thought that it was a really interesting opportunity, and it's part of the reason I took this class because it's something that I was really interested in. All of the trips that you take together are really interesting. We went to Harry Potter studio.
Stonehenge, we got to.
So I went to Stonehenge. I went to Naples with my friends. There were quite a few others. We went to London. Just a lot of really, really interesting experiences that we all had together. The group that I went with last year was uniquely close, I think. I still talk to a lot of people there, even if they're not my close friends. I was just walking outside my house and someone who I knew from the Oxford program like beeped at me just to say hi. So it's a really, really fun experience. You'll meet friends that you're going to have forever. And no matter what you like to do, you'll find something that you like to do there. So, yeah.
Great, thanks. And, it's interesting. Ann and I have made friends too. I mean, Dr. Antonova, Dr. Ritchie, and, the Trinity staff, we go back, we normally would go back every year at the end of June, and it was like, we had been seeing them all year long. So it's great. And we did, we've actually done a couple of Zoom sessions with them to, kind of keep up on things. So they're all doing well. I mean, they're dealing with the same things that we're dealing with. Again, I'll let you know when that meeting's set up. I don't know what they're going to do. They'll put it on notice board. Normally there's posters all around, but as we said, everything is different this year. So, okay. I'd like to hear what questions you have for me. Like I said, I've been talking a lot. So, Hannah, since you've been talking, you can ask the first question, Tony.
I was wondering what your perspective was on the overall distrust that the public seems to have towards the media nowadays and the growing distrust. So,
it's really upsetting to me because I think, you should be suspicious of things, but having worked in the media, I know how hard people work to get things accurate. And, people tend not to read complete stories. They read tweets, they read headlines. And there are a lot of organizations out there that, are not, say, legitimate news organizations, but people read them and they have an influence. I don't know how we get that trust back or if we ever will, but it's upsetting to me. I mean, I go places and they ask what I do, and I say I teach journalism, and even people you don't know say, oh, do you teach them fake news? And it's kind of like, what other professions would you insult somebody with when you first meet them like that? So it's something that the industry is concerned about. And I think the last article we read, the Pointer study, I thought it was interesting that they said that the more people know reporters, they'll get to trust them more. Now, everybody can't get to know every reporter, but maybe if you can break down some of those barriers, that might help. And that's, in a way, that's what I try to do with the guest speakers, because you'll be talking with journalists, you'll be talking with people who work on campaigns, people who run for office, and just to see that they're real people. I taught at Rutgers when I was getting my PhD, and I had a class with about 100 students, and I would bring in a lot of guest speakers, and that's kind of the reaction I would get often. Well, gee, I thought these guys all were liars and crooks, but he really made a lot of sense. Okay, and I didn't tell everybody, I have questions for you too. So I'm curious, you said in one of your posts that you used to be a poli-sci major. What made you switch?
So one of the reasons I switched was because I wanted to go to law school, and I don't think that the poli-sci major was going to help me do that the way I wanted to. Philosophy helps me with critical thinking that is unique to that specific major, and it also helps me with preparing for the LSAT. So with the logical thinking and logical reasoning, though I liked political science, I found it to be a little bit a little bit difficult. My advisor was more focused on international and foreign policy,
Yeah.
so I wasn't really getting exactly what I needed. Plus, I'm on the mock trial team, and Dr. Nuttall is my coach, so he strongly encouraged that I change my major. So it was sort of a bunch of those things combined. Plus, the negative reaction you get when you say you're a political science major is something
Right.
I'd like to do without.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see how philosophy, would help you with the critical thinking. And political science is such a broad term. Like, I think a lot of what gets taught in political science here is different from what I do. I think you're right. There's more of a focus on international stuff, which is important. But
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Allison, what's your question for me?
One question that I had was, which of the 5 filters that we discussed in class do you think is the most influential or important, and why?
That's a really good question for a woman. Let me stop and think about the filters. I would say maybe the 4th one on flack, only because the way women are treated, is different than men. And I think, say like on Twitter, people tend to be more critical of the woman as a woman as opposed to what she said or what she tweeted. So I think most of them, I don't think would matter a whole lot, but as I think of the 4, that's the one I think would be, have the most impact on a woman. What do you think? Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. I also think, personally, I think fear would be one of the, I guess, other influential ones, just because, I guess, in contrast to when I travel to other countries, like the news that they watch versus the news that we watch is very different. And so I think that has an influence on how people like carry themselves, because I know last year I studied how America lives in this culture of fear, and how a lot of headlines include, I guess, very like graphic words or things that are just like school shootings for something. Like example would be that like it just grabs your attention, but like other things in Canada will like I guess be, sometimes they can be less, I guess, graphic. So I think fear is a big one for me.
Yeah, as I was running through in my head, I was either 4 or 5 in there. So, okay, I have an easy question for you. No, not. You're from New Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay, where in New Jersey? Since, as you probably know, that's where I spent most of my life and career.
I'm from Princeton.
Oh, okay. I lived in Hamilton for like 25 years before I came back to Bonaventure. I kept moving further. Well, I lived in Hamilton because I covered the State House in Trenton. So, I had a couple of students from Princeton. I think I had 2 in my class last semester.
Yeah, I think you had Ayushi one of those years, and
Yeah.
we went to the same school, and she's like my best friend. So.
Oh, okay.
Class.
Tell her hello. I haven't. I don't see students walking around campus this semester, so I don't get to do that.
I will tell her hello.
Okay. Justin, what's your question?
So I watched the Confronting Misinformation panel, and I was wondering, like, as a journalist, does like the misinformation of like the splicing videos to make them look different than what they are, do you think that, like, does that hurt the like journalism as a whole, like the public's opinion of mistrust?
Yeah, but my recollection though is that a lot of that's really not done by journalists. I mean, they made reference, and for folks who weren't there, the videos being manipulated. And one of the recent examples was there was a video of Nancy Pelosi, which they slowed up so it looked like she was drunk, but it was done by opponents of Nancy Pelosi. So I think you make a good point. People don't make the distinction between what journalists post and what maybe somebody else posts on Facebook. So I think what journalists have to do is expose that sort of thing. And what the public has to do is, read and acknowledge and believe that it's not true. I think one of the problems that we have today is people just don't believe facts on the left or the right. And, no matter what you do to try to convince them that they didn't see something they said they saw, it's really tough. So I guess, my answer is, yeah, if a journalist did that, it's very damaging. But I think most of it comes from one side or the other, trying to make the other side look bad. And the problem is that, people don't, people see something on Facebook and that everything kind of blends together, what a journalist does, what some campaign does, that sort of thing. So, okay. What should I ask you? What, going into the presidential election, what issue is most important to you, like as a college student?
Just, I don't know, just like, I don't know, I like to look at like the different economic issues, I'd say. That's kind of what I look at. So like the way taxes or healthcare, stuff like that. I find that interesting to look at.
Yeah, economic issues usually are the most important to people of all ages, when it comes down to it. And, if people feel good economically, if the economy is good, they tend to support the person in office. This campaign is going to be a little different because, Trump's personality is so overpowering. But in elections I've seen, and a lot of times the chief executive, whether it's a governor or a president, doesn't have, maybe I wouldn't say a lot to do, but there's a lot of factors that make the economy be better, be worse, but you're the benefit or the victim of either a good or bad economy. So I think that, all these other issues are important, but pretty much the bottom line for most people, they're what they call pocketbook issues and things like that. Okay. Wesley, what do you have for me?
Yeah, so I was curious, like how you and like your media cohort feels about Trump using Twitter. Not necessarily like what he posts and all that, but just the fact that he's on social media. Like how you feel about that.
Well, it's like everything else. It's good and it's great for getting information out there. I'm troubled by when journalists tweet and you kind of get a sense of what they feel about an issue or a person, which should really stay out of their stories. And I kind of think that should stay out of what they put on social media. But I'm seeing more and more of that. I'm finding, I think I may have mentioned one of my other jobs is my wife and I run this online news site that students put together, Tap into Greater Olean, that sometimes if you don't have enough for a story, somebody can tweet something and just say, this is happening, I'm checking out the details. So it's a way to kind of get that information out there. But not just Twitter, but just the pace of information today, it may have contributed to some of the mistrust because stuff gets out there really quickly before it gets vetted and checked, and everybody wants to have it first. Everyone wants to have it out before the other person. What do you think?
I was gonna ask if you think that Trump should like run his own Twitter, or if he should have like a specialist do it. What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure I caught the whole question there.
So, do you think Trump should be able to tweet like his own thoughts, or he should like say what he thinks to someone like a specialist, and they do it?
I mean, I'm kind of guessing, but I think he does it himself.
I think so too.
Yeah, just because there's so many, and and I think we would have heard, or someone who covers the White House would know that there's somebody there working with him. But the speed, even if he had somebody with him side by side all the time, I don't think we'd see those tweets, so many tweets coming out so quickly.
Right.
So it is interesting that the president of the United States can, sometimes they count how many tweets he's done in a day, or, I'll watch the Sunday morning talk shows, and by 10 o'clock, they'll say he's tweeted 100 times or something like that. So it's kind of amazing. So, Anyway, I noticed on a couple of things on your bio. First, that you love Disney, which
Oh
I come
yeah,
from a family of Disney lovers, so
yeah, big Disney.
I like it too. But I have two daughters who are in love with Disney. They're grown now, but they still have their spots where they go to when they go to the parks and things like that.
Yeah, we just came back from a trip in January. We were lucky enough to go like before the pandemic hit, and like before it closed down and all that. So
Yeah. And I thought one of your comments or observations on the panel was interesting because it was someone you're from North Carolina?
yes, sir.
Yeah, and someone was talking about North Carolina, and you said they
Yep.
kind of mischaracterized the way the state was.
Well, she says she either lives or is from Raleigh, but she just said the whole state was really rural, and I don't think that's true. I mean, I know I'm from Charlotte, and it's definitely not rural in Charlotte, but I've definitely traveled around a lot, with baseball and scouts and everything. And although there are some rural counties, I'd say it's more urban, a much faster pace than a rural character. Like when I think rural, I think like Olean, and
Yeah, I mean, it was a good observation because, sometimes, journalists try to talk authoritatively, and they can, but, there's no substitute for actually living in a state or knowing something.
right.
Catherine or Kat, what's your question?
I'm not really good with phrasing questions, so ask me to clarify if need be.
Okay.
But I was kind of wondering how journalists should balance their sort of interpretations of information that they get. Obviously, you're just wanting to report facts, but also, how should a journalist interpret those facts to report to everybody else?
Well, they should. I mean, I think one of the results of social media is we don't learn what happened from a journalist a lot of times initially. I think of sports. You don't pick up the newspaper the next day or turn on the TV at 11 o'clock to see who won a game. You follow it right away, who's winning. So there tends to be more interpretation and analysis, and that happens that too. I think it should be not so much interpretation, but explanatory. There's a lot of things that happen with government, with politics, with any subject, that if you follow them closely, you understand it. I think the job of the journalist is to kind of put that in terms that a layperson, someone who's not an expert on those particular field, can understand. So it's tough because, when you look at the interpretations, sometimes they come from a certain slant, and a lot of people don't distinguish between what's opinion, what's labeled as opinion, what's labeled as news. And I think news organizations are, somewhat at fault about that too. Sometimes they don't label those things as distinctly as they should. But I think we're at an age where journalists can't just report facts straightforward. The facts by themselves, because people are going to know a lot of those facts already. It becomes on part of the journalist, not so much to interpret. I always tell my journalism students, you're giving people information they can't get themselves. Like if you cover a basketball game, everybody knows who's won, but you can talk to the players, you can talk to the coach, and the same thing, with politics. You can talk to the people involved, the people running for office, their campaign teams. So, you try to give them more than they can get themselves, and do it in a manner that, that is unbiased, which is tough. Everybody brings something to the table from their own life experiences, and you try to keep that out of your writing as best you can. Okay, question for you, and I know in some of your writing you had said you really weren't into politics, which is great because a lot of people take this course and others, just to kind of get a taste of it. Are you more optimistic about the world? You feel better about the world of politics after 3 weeks, or worse?
I mean, I feel better about it, honestly, because now I'm actually I watched the DNC and the RNC, and I feel a bit more confident that now that I'm actually paying attention, and it doesn't seem as quite as monstrous as it did originally. So I'd say it's getting better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of my goals is hopefully people feel more positive about things and you want to be involved. Natalie. Natalie was the only person who came to my voluntary Moodle class, so good to see you again.
So my question was, I mean, I had one, but then I kind of like thought of another one after like Hannah asked your question. Do you think that there's going to be like a rise in like, because I mean, I definitely like am more like critical of like, you know, news sources, you know, in the past. I mean, I don't know if it's just because I'm like growing up or because of like everything that's happened, but do you think that there's going to be a rise in like local newspapers? Because I find that like I trust more like local newspapers more than I would like a huge CNN or Fox like headline.
Not only do I think there is, but they're actually, that's starting to happen. The website we do here is part of a franchise. This is we're Tap Into Greater Olean. There's more than 80 different Tap Into sites around the country, and they're all what they call hyper-local news, where they just write about the towns they cover, and they've become really popular, and people are learning about what goes on in their community. And, you know, that's just Tap Into, but, you know, just from being involved with that, we're seeing more and more, you know, kind of an emphasis on local news, which would be a good thing. As with everything else, there has to be an economic model. So some of them are struggling. They put out good products, but it's tough to fund them. There's one in Montclair, New Jersey, where I used to live, which is a really, they're fortunate that Montclair has a number of people, residents who really had high profile media jobs, and they got together and put together a really good local newspaper. So, you know, it's happening. And I think you're right. People tend to trust their local newspapers more, or if something's wrong, they know it's wrong because they have observed it. Like if somebody writes a story about a council meeting and the story doesn't necessarily misquote, but misrepresents what somebody did, there's going to be 2 or 3 people who heard that person talk. They're going to be critical, but they're critical with firsthand knowledge as opposed to reading something, hearing it second or third hand. So, yeah, I hope that continues to happen. I mean, you said, you know, do you see yourself looking more towards local news outlets?
Yeah, and like not just like, I mean, I'm not from here, but I do actually like follow like the local news now because I just think that it's really important to like actually know that your reporters like I know the names, like I've kind of started to like recognize the names, and that also happens when I like read the news at home, which I don't do as often when I'm here, but at home I recognize their names. So.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to the question that Wesley asked about Twitter. I mean, part of being on Twitter, you get to know people's personalities more than when I was a reporter, your byline was on the paper. You know, people generally didn't notice who wrote stories other than your family members or the people you wrote about. And now, you know, and again, it's something we do in our journalism classes. You not only have to learn to be a good reporter, you have to learn to be your own brand and to tweet stuff. So, but I think that helps people get to know a reporter or see stuff about his or her personality. And I know there's certain people that I follow. And we're also seeing that reporters are building their own followings. Somebody might go from one organization to another, and you know, you'll keep reading them. And sometimes you don't even know who the person's, or you do know, but who they work for isn't as important as the fact that you like the way this person writes. Okay. I made a list of questions here. Tell me one thing you've learned so far that you didn't know about politics in the first 3 weeks.
I would say, I mean, I'm definitely learning. I kind of had like a pretty solid foundation of like politics already, just because I personally follow it. But I'm definitely getting a better understanding as to how the media like reacts with it. And I think that it's also like really important to know how the media covers politics because that's where you get most of your information from. So.
Yeah, like I said, that's, well, I mean, the other course I teach is actually called Media and Democracy, but because of my background, you end up dealing with a lot of media here. So, okay. Let's see. Dominic, you didn't ask a question yet, did you?
No, I didn't. So like, I don't know. if there was like one thing that you think we could all just be asking our the people that we're going to be interviewing in the coming weeks, like one thing that's like of particular importance above most other things, what do you think like that would be?
Well,
if there is anything like that.
actually, you reminded me of something I wanted to tell everybody, that I actually wanted to have everybody ask the interviewees the same question, because it's one of the things I did as a journalist. Sometimes if you're interviewing a bunch of people and you ask them all the same question, you could end up with a story at the end. When I was doing my music writing, sometimes like I knew I was going to be interviewing over the course of a couple of weeks, a dozen musicians, and I could ask them all the same question. And one of the ones I remember doing, and I know it dates me, but it's when MTV was new and musicians suddenly had to do videos in addition to recording. So I asked everybody, how do you feel about this added responsibility? And they had different answers, but I got a story at the end. And I've done some of that with the Gendoli Institute and other things. So thanks. I don't know if the rest of the class is going to thank you, but you reminded me of an assignment I wasn't going to, I meant, and it's not a big assignment. I'll put it on. I mean, I'd like people to suggest a question that we ask all the guests. If I had to ask a question, and I thought about this, and I'm not married to the question, but just I would ask them, if you could change one thing about the campaign process, what would it be? So, maybe we go with that one, but I treat some of this class, my other classes, I run like a democracy. So I'll get an email out to people if you have other ideas, but I think, that would be great. Let me ask you a question. We just had an article on the Gendoli Institute that political scientists wrote, suggesting that we have an age cap for people who run for the president. Obviously, we have two candidates now who are, over 70. There's a age limitation that you have to be 35 before you can run. Should we do a restriction the other way around?
Just kind of right off the bat, I think we probably shouldn't, because like, I don't know, there's kind of like a wisdom in age, if like you get what I mean.
Yeah.
And well, like, I don't know, to kind of take away something because you're too old doesn't really seem very fair in like a sense.
Yeah, no, I see. Yeah, I see your point, and I'd have to agree with. I mean, there's some people who are in their 80s and are still pretty sharp about things. Other people, and I think ultimately the vote is, if the voters see someone who's, not there mentally or not up to the job, then they don't select that person. But it was an interesting article, and actually the guy who wrote it was in his 70s, so it was interesting that he came up with that proposal. Okay, who haven't I had? Anshu, have you asked a question? I don't think so.
No, I haven't.
Oh, good to see you too. So.
I went to the Role of Television webinar, and they were talking about like the red mirage and how they should like warn viewers about that. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on it and how it'll like affect the election.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, because I hadn't heard that term before. For people who aren't on there, one of the panelists said Republicans tend to are more likely to vote in person. Democrats are more likely to vote by absentee or by mail if it's allowed, so that the initial results are going to look like Republicans are doing better, that Trump is doing better. And they kind of talked about the 2018 congressional elections, which followed a similar pattern. So yeah, I think, maybe it goes back to the question about interpretation. I mean, do you put up the results and then do you say, well, these are likely more Republican voters, or do you really know if they're Republican voters? I think you put up the results and you say, well, there's still X number or X percentage still out there that have to come in. Maybe you can cite some previous elections. But it was interesting. I don't know if you picked up right after that, the panelist after him said, I don't believe any of that. It's not true. So, yeah, I don't know. But it was, up until that point, I was kind of fascinated with it. I mean, he had some stats, which I think you mentioned too in your post, about just how many more votes the Democrats pick up after Election Day. So it's one of those things to keep an eye on. So, okay, great. So you're a volleyball player, or you were a volleyball player, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of our professors here, Heather Harris, played volleyball for Syracuse. So I think if you ever find your way over to the Murphy Building, you can talk volleyball. I'll kind of ask the, similar question that I asked. Are you more optimistic about politics, but turn it into the media? Do you feel better or worse about the media 3 weeks into the course?
To be honest, like I didn't really follow politics at all before this. So I mean, I'm just like happy that I didn't know where to begin. So I'm happy I took this course because I like have learned a lot more about politics just in 3 weeks. So I'm definitely optimistic.
Okay, well, good. Stay optimistic. Jessica, I'm kind of losing my notes. Did you ask a question yet? So no, Jessica, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
Sorry,
there you
my
are.
alarm went off, and my computer's like really old, so it was just working. But I don't know what questions were asked because like the fire department came. So, but I have one, and it's for you. It says, "What's your favorite place that you've worked at?"
My favorite place where I worked? Did I hear? I mean, that was a question?
Yeah.
My answer is I liked every place I worked while I was working there, except for one job. Early on, I worked for an insurance company doing their company magazine, and I realized quickly it wasn't for me. And I know it sounds hokey, but I would say working at St. Bonaventure now is probably my favorite for a number of reasons. I went to undergraduate school here, so it was kind of surrealistic coming back here after 30, 35 years. But to come back to the place where you were an undergraduate, where, I met my wife, met some of my best friends here, and to become part of the faculty, it was good. And then I like teaching, and teaching is something that I got into later in life. I wasn't, I didn't go straight through school, get certified. I had my career, and it's a chance for me to talk about what I've done professionally. And, this happens in this class, but even more so in the journalism classes, and, share that with the students. Plus, after working in, normal jobs where you work 52 weeks a year, maybe you have 2 or 3 weeks off, the opportunity to become an academic where, the first year I was here, graduation came in May, and I realized I didn't have to work again till the end of August. And, that to me, if you've been an academic all your life, that's normal. But if you're used to maybe just having a few weeks off over the whole calendar year, that was great. And you have a lot of independence, as long as you show up for your classes and you teach, you can work your schedule around them. So, so I would say to rank all my jobs right now, I'm in the favorite one. But everything I did, I really enjoyed while I was there. And I'm very fortunate to do that, to be able to say that, because not everybody can. What's your favorite thing that we've read or watched so far, the different videos or articles that I put up?
I really liked the seminar that we did like last week. I liked seeing a bunch of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and their opinions on stuff and how they agreed and how they differed.
Well, I'm glad you liked that. I hope everyone else enjoyed it too. It was like I said, the timing came along, just right, and it was free, and I knew Lou Jacobson, who's one of our speakers. I had been working with him, and it looked like it was going to be good. And I caught pretty much all 4. I missed part of the first one because I had an appointment, but I thought it was a real good session. And that's kind of, it's nerdy on my part, but every Sunday morning I'll watch Meet the Press, I'll watch Face the Nation, just to get all that. I thought it was a good way, for everyone else to get a taste of what's going on, and to realize how unique this election is going to be, which is really kind of an opportunity for us. Okay, just looking here. Did I get everybody? Got Hannah, Jessica, Anshu, Allison, Justin. Anybody who didn't ask a question? Anybody have a question you want to ask you didn't get to ask? Okay, well, good. Like I said, I glad we did this. You know, just keep checking Moodle. Like I said, you know, for this week, you know, if you haven't had a chance to watch one of those panels, do that. I will, you know, put something out about the one question, you know, we want people to ask, and, you know, see what we get, because I think that's a good idea, which I had, but one of you had. So, I mean, the fact that we're thinking in the right direction is probably the same direction. Is a good thing. So, okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.